Hi everyone, welcome back to Art with Mrs. Bodden. Today I'm going to show you some fun watercolor techniques. So go ahead and grab your watercolors. I've got my set of Crayolas. They're pretty well used, but they still work. Grab a brush, grab a cup of water, grab some heavy paper. So this is watercolor paper, or you can use multimedia paper, or even just cardstock. You need a heavy paper because if we do this technique on printer paper, it's not going to turn out. It's going to end up totally destroying your paper. Now, there is one thing that I have found to help out with watercolors, and that is a spray bottle. This activates our paint super fast in a super easy way. So, if you're going to do a lot of watercolors, go buy an inexpensive water bottle. I got mine at Walmart. You can see it's well loved and well used. It's got some clay all over it. Any type of water bottle will work as long as you can spray it on your paints. So I'm going to swap this over to my other camera and we are going to get started. So as you can see here, I've got a messy mat or a piece of paper underneath my project that I'm going to be working on. Scrap paper, newspaper, even the puppy pads that your puppies go on if you've got them indoors. Anything like that that will be super helpful for this project because we're going to get our paper wet. And not just a little bit of wet, but soaking wet. So you want to make sure you've got your table protected so nothing's going to happen to it. So as you can see, I've got my watercolors to the left of me. My paper's in the middle. I have a couple other pieces of paper because this is super fun and I really want to do a couple of them. Then I have my water cup. And I'm going to stick my water cup near my paint palette because it's just easier to go from here and here back and forth. So I'm going to take my fun spray bottle and I'm going to spray my paints to activate them. We need water for watercolors. Without that water, our watercolors can't work. They're just dried up, so they don't work. Now I'm going to take my paintbrush, and I sprayed it. Oh well. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to make sure it's all clean. So I'm just going to stick it in my water. Now remember, I said we need that water. So if I go like this, that's going to take water and put it back in my cup, which means I can't use it anymore because it's not on my brush. If I do this and brush it off to the side of my cup, again, I'm taking the water off my brush, so I don't have the water to use, and I need that water. Lastly, do we pinch our brush to get that water off? No, we need that water. When you are cleaning, though, don't do this. Don't make the cool fan look, unless that's a fan to paintbrush. Don't do that, because that breaks our bristles right here, and then your paintbrush isn't going to work anymore. So, are we ready? We're going to do exploding paint, or paint explosions, whichever way you want to call it. So I have my piece of multimedia paper, watercolor paper, and I need to make it wet. Now, when I say wet, I want it soaking wet. So I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to paint it. And if you look at your paper at an angle, you're going to be able to see that it is wet. And I'm only going to do the top half for this part, and I'll do the bottom half in just a minute. The other way you know you're getting enough water is you're going to see your paper start to curl. So you can see mine starting to curl up. I actually stick my paintbrush underneath. And that's what we want. So now my paper is just about ready. You can see it's soaking wet and it's curly, which is what we want. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to load it up with some water. Then I'm going to put it in a color. And I think we're going to do, let's do red first. So I'm going to swirl it 3 times in red. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pull it straight up. And then I'm just going to touch it. You see how that paint starts to spread? The wetter our paper is, the more spreading it does. So, and if I touch it a little bit longer, my color gets a little bit more. So I'm going to touch it a couple of times. Now, I'm going to rinse my brush. You see my water turn a little bit red. And I'm going to pick a second color. Now, when I pick my second color, I don't want to go too far up to green because then I'm going to get brown if they mix. So I want to stick right around red. So I'm actually going to take the purple because in my color wheel, it goes red and then to purple. So I'm going to swirl it, make sure I got it loaded up with nice and water. You can see the water drop. I'm going to swirl it 3 times in my purple and then I'm going to drop. And you get those paint explosions. Now, I'm going to do one again and make sure my paper's even wetter. We'll see what happens. So, these are just little ones. If I want to make them explode a little bit more, I can always take my brush and add a little bit of water. And then things start to run. Oop, I probably shouldn't have done that one into the red. Oh well. And see those explode a little bit more. Stick it in the red. Okay, so I'm just going to let that be. Yes, it's dripping off the top of my paper. That's okay. That's why we have a messy mat. This time, I'm going to paint the bottom half of my paper. This time I want to get it super, super wet. And yes, it's okay if your paint trails onto this side, if you get it too close. Because watercolor is going to want to go where the water is. So I'm going to make sure mine is super, super wet. Because that's when the cool stuff happens. So getting it super, 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 super wet. Super curly. Okay. I'm going to pick yellow this time. Because yellow is my favorite color. So full of water. 1, 2, 3. And then watch. See how those just kind of explode all out over the place? We'll do green next to go with it. So green's next. Hopefully my paper's still wet. Did you see that? Look at that. Isn't that cool? Look at that. Now, if I want to make these run a little bit more, again, I just dip my brush in. I can tap it just a little bit, and I'll help them run just a little bit more. And if they run off the paper, oh well. Okay, I'm going to pause because I'm going to set this aside, and then I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I'm back. Set that off to the side. I'm now going to clean my brush again because I want that clean water. And we're going to soak our paper. This time, I'm going to soak a little bit more. A little more than half. We want it really, really wet, otherwise those paint explosions don't happen. We want to see those paint explosions. Okay. Just a tip. If you can hear your paintbrush going across your paper, it means you don't have enough water on it. Okay, so I've got it. My paper's curling. Let's do blue this time. So, dip in my brush in my water. 1, 2, 3 swirls in blue. And yes, it's way more fun when you make the noises. Look at all those. Isn't that cool? Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush. Let's do violet with it. So I'm going to do 3 swirls in my violet. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. Just keep tapping your paper. When you run out of paint, dip your brush in your water a little bit. Get a little bit more paint on it if you want to. Now you can see this one's kind of swirling, following the water, which is okay. You just kind of touch it and watch it explode. Now, if I want to guide these a little bit more, I can add just a little bit of water and kind of mix it around. We can make it look like a reverse Sully from Monsters, Inc. So now I can move it all around if I want to keep some of the big bursts, but fill in some of the others, just like that. If I want it a little darker, I just get a little bit more water on my brush. This time I don't want as much water, so I'm going to touch the side just a little bit. I'm going to swirl in my purple just a little bit, and then I can take and I can tap, and then I can swirl it around and move it around. There's already plenty of water on my paper, so I really don't need to add water to move this around. But if I had it in a super concentrated spot, and it was super, super dark, like this, and it wasn't going anywhere, just tip my brush in and use a little bit of water to help move it around. Super easy. That looks cool. Okay, we gotta move around the rest of it. See how those aren't moving? I'm gonna add a little bit of, use the water on my paper and just kind of pull it around, move it around. I really like that bright blue, so I'm gonna keep it. Just kind of move some of this around. I don't really want a bright, dark purple, so this faded purple is pretty good. Move that all around. See? Now, if I try and paint some of this onto my dry, it's going to give me a very streaky effect and very, very light, because my dry part is just that. It's dry. So automatically, my fun watercolor wants to soak in to that paper. Okay. Let's set this to the side. Let's do a third one. This will be my last one, I promise. Okay. So, last one. Let's go this way. So, first thing I'm going to do is stick my water in my brush in my water. Swirl it around, get rid of that paint, and then I'm going to paint the top. Paint the top. Okay, so the top part is pretty wet. You can see my water if I look at it at an angle. And so we're going to start with, let's do a little bit of orange. The orange. I'm just going to go get some kind of close together. You can kind of create a different pattern that way if you want. When you run out of paint, one dip. Don't clean your brush and swirl it again. And you can see how those kind of move all over. And if you want darker, you make sure you swirl it a couple more times and then you stick it in. Because the more concentrated the paint is, the darker it will be. Okay. Now, I have to be really careful with my orange. If I put blue next to it, you know what's going to happen? It's going to turn brown. Do I want brown? No, I don't want brown. So I'm going to take and I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to wet this a little bit more because this half of my paper started to dry. So I'm just going to wet this part. And I'm going to pick a color that's on either side of that orange. And I'm going to pick red. So I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and clean. Probably doesn't look it because my water's all gross, but it is. Got my water on my brush, and then I'm going to swirl it 3 times in my red, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to watch those paint explosions. And what happens if red and orange mix? You get red-orange, which is totally okay. Just loading my paintbrush up a little bit more. Seeing how those red pieces kind of go out and around. Filling in with a couple little spots. Look at all this puddle. Puddling's okay. Puddling looks kind of cool. Okay, I'm going to add some water to the bottom here. Oh, looks like I didn't clean my brush all the way, which is fine. We'll use red again. So I'm going to do some more red. Swirl it a couple more times. I'm just going to do some pretty cool paint explosions. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush better this time. We're going to do yellow. Because yellow, again, is my favorite color. I'm going to do yellow in here. So getting up into the orange, it's okay if it runs, not a big deal. Okay, so now we're going to do yellow. Clean my brush, swirl it around on the bottom. Pull it up. I'm going to go 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. I did 4. I'm going to do the same thing with our yellow. Just going to stick it in. Now, yellow, because it is a lighter color, it's going to take a lot more paint to make it show up. So it's okay if you have to dip it back in if you're using yellow, because it's not going to necessarily show up as much. So like these are kind of exploding, not as much as my orange did or my red, but they kind of are. And they're just a little darker to see, or a little lighter to see, wrong word. Okay. So, there you have some fun watercolors, watercolor explosions. Now in my class, we are going to use these. We're going to actually do this in this few more weeks. We're going to do turtles, and this is going to be our turtle shell. You could also, though, take these and make them into flowers or backgrounds for other things. Have some fun with it. So, I will see you next time. Have fun, and I'll see you soon. Bye.